I don't remember asking for a copy of The Communist Daughter. It just sort of appeared in the post one day from Tinder Press, and as soon as I saw the cover and read the title, it piqued my interest. As someone who is a big fan of modern post-World War II German history, and as a socialist, I was very, very excited to see what this was all about. And as soon as I read the bio of the author in the back, I was even more thrilled. Aroa Moreno Duran is an incredible person. She has multiple degrees in journalism, she is a published poet, and she's also written two non-fiction biographies of two amazing historical figures. One, Frida Kahlo, and the other, Federico Garcia Lorca, who wrote the play Yerma, which I am a huge fan of. So, good start. This is her first piece of fiction. It has won awards in Spanish, and now it has been translated into English by Katie Whittemore. The translation is absolutely fantastic. The novel as a whole is not perfect, and I'm about 50-50 on it. So what's it about? The Communist Daughter is set in Berlin between the end of World War II and the fall of the Berlin Wall, and it follows the life of a young woman called Katya. Katya is the daughter of two refugees from the Spanish Civil War, which kind of bled into World War II. And the Spanish Civil War was a war between the left and the right, the communists and the fascists. Now her family live in East Berlin in East Germany, a place that kind of represents what Katya's father was fighting for. Now, immediately, this is something that I find very, very exciting. As a socialist who gets angry every single day at people confusing communism with what I call capital C communism, which is effectively fascism, it kind of bugs me. And so I like any kind of fiction or non-fiction that explores the history of communism, socialism, and how these things often get co-opted by oligarchies and tyrants. This book, right from the beginning, right from the blurb, tells you that that's kind of what you're gonna find here. The book is split into 4 parts, and in the first part, we more or less follow a very quick journey through Katya's youth as a very, very young girl moving into young adulthood, university age. In the beginning, we are thrust from chapter to chapter, and the book is very, very interestingly structured in that the chapters move very, very quickly. From chapter to chapter, we take huge jumps in time, 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, but within the chapters, they're very, very slow. So we jump very quickly through time and then grind to a halt and crawl for a few pages through a chapter. It's a pretty short book, and the chapters themselves are pretty short as well. And the first part, which follows her youth, isn't all that interesting. It kind of establishes East Berlin and the atmosphere of the place, and it establishes her family. She has a sister, she has 2 parents who are refugees. Her father speaks to them exclusively in German because they live in Germany, while the mother retains her Spanish heritage and speaks to them in Spanish. So they speak both languages. And Katya is just living a very ordinary youth for the most part until one day she is out and she sees a group of school children from West Berlin who look over at these children of East Berlin, and one of them makes a joke about not feeding the animals. So you get a sense of the socio-political differences between these two groups. The story really begins, as the blurb says, I'm not spoiling anything, when Katya sees this young West German guy called Johannes, and he has this obsession with her. They are now teenagers. They are 17, 18, 19 years old, and he is kind of obsessed with her, and he's following her, and he's taking a real interest in her. It sounds creepy. It's actually not. He's not a creep. He is falling in love with her really, really quickly, and eventually she, through his help, finds a way to escape East Berlin and move to West Berlin. And after that, we're about halfway through the book, and we have a whole new life for her to unpack. The blurb of the book actually gives all of this away. So as I said, I am not spoiling anything. The second half of the book explores her adulthood, her relationship with Johannes, her new second life. Katya is a person with 2 lives. And the book very, very quickly moves through her youth, moves through her escape, move, disappearance, whatever you want to call it. And then we have a second life. So it's a book that's really split into 2. And both halves are pretty interesting. in a social way, in a drama kind of a way. It's all from her perspective, it's in the first person. That's true until you get to part 4. Part 4 covers the final 25-ish pages of the book, and it is one single chapter. And that one part, that final 4th part, is written in the third person, and it is full of political and familial revelations, which I'm not going to spoil, but it kind of comes from nowhere, it comes out of left field, and the fact that, while it is very exciting, the fact that it is written in the third person doesn't add any weight to it, and contextually I couldn't figure out why it was done when the rest of the book is written in the first person, and that first person narration is really, really good. It helps us ground ourselves in Katya's life. It also is a book that is pretty sparse when it comes to dialogue. A lot of it feels like it's written in diary entries. A lot of he said, she said, this is what Katya has to say and think and feel about what's being said to her, so we are very much in her head the whole time. The politics of socialism versus capitalism, of East versus West, it's all there and it all feeds into the narrative and it bleeds through constantly, but at no point does it feel like it's center stage. It's very much a personal drama, a family drama, a love story to an extent. What is here is pretty enjoyable, but I have to say that I've come away from it not feeling a whole lot. I don't feel like this book has moved me in any real emotional capacity. I feel a little bit numb to the events of the story. There is one particularly impactful moment later in the story, something that Johannes does. He thinks he's doing something good for Katya, and he very much is not. I can't talk about it, but I do think that is one of the better chapters. It's probably the best chapter, and it's a pretty exciting moment. But apart from that, and apart from, I guess, her escape to West Berlin, apart from that, there isn't that much to gravitate towards emotionally. You don't feel that connected to Katya. She almost feels at times like a tool for exploring the difference between East Berlin, West Berlin, communism and capitalism. And while we look at the fall of the Berlin Wall, we look back at the difference between East Berlin and West Berlin, the USSR, the Iron Curtain, we look at that, especially in the West, with a little bit of disdain. Katya's character is a very, very different and more sympathetic narrative vehicle for that time and that place. Katya loves her family, and she's grown up loving East Berlin and East Germany and not having any real issues with the politics. And it's a world that her father was trying to build. And the thing about capital C communism, as I call it, is that it is co-opted by the powerful. Revolutions that are supposed to bring power to the people often then create a vacuum which gets filled by power-hungry people who are leaders of that revolution. You know this, you've read Animal Farm. Anyway, her father has this brainwashed kind of mentality where he had an ideology in Spain, he had something that he was fighting for, that he was a part of, this communist revolution, this fight against fascism, only for all of that to be washed away by the waters of reality in East Berlin under the rule of the Iron Curtain. And that part is pretty interesting. But, unfortunately, Katya's father doesn't play a huge role in the story. It's very much her story of falling in love and seeing the greener grass on the other side. And actually, what's interesting about her story and her take on East versus West, capitalism versus communism, is that she's pretty jaded by what she finds on the other side when she gets there, and that's exciting. I think what's bugging me now that I've finished it, what has left me feeling a little bit dry, a little bit hollow, is that none of it was explored well enough. I am not someone who often thinks that a book should be longer than it is. If anything, a book is either the perfect length or it could have been a bit shorter. This book could have done with some more length, it could have done with some more bulk. It could have done with adding a few more chapters, a few more conversations with other people, a little bit more historical context maybe, a little more introspection, even though it's in the first person already. It seems like it's too quick. It feels like a summary of a book rather than a book itself. What I will say is fantastic about it is the translation. There is one particular bit which I read and I thought, yep, that really sums up the power of the translation. Katie Whittemore has done an incredible job here. And the line was, "The knot of places I was made of." That was it. I thought that was such a beautiful piece of imagery, a knot of places. She's Spanish, she's German, she's East German, she's West German, she's all of these things and she's none of these things. And that line actually comes from that one chapter I mentioned that I really loved. Apart from that, there's not a lot going on. The writing is serviceable, it's wonderfully translated, and the character of Katya is a great vehicle for the plot. But it just feels a little bit too quick and it's over very suddenly. I feel like I'm taking on a whirlwind tour of this person's life, of the history of East Berlin and West Berlin, and that's pretty much it, and then it's done. I wanted a little bit more, and I didn't get that. I feel like this could have been a better book if it was twice as long. And again, that's not something I often say. So in the end, it just feels a little bit brief. I'm still glad that I read The Communist Daughter. I think it's a worthwhile read. I just think that there is missed opportunity here for a grander story, a greater narrative. Something that is at once more truthful and more dramatic. And we don't really get that, unfortunately. Overall, I recommend it as a serviceable read. I just think it could have had more time in the oven, more time to grow, a little bit more. It could have given us more. It could have given us more character, more relationships, more story, just more. All right. Subscribe for books.